In today's show, why the freezer is your friend, there's a moose loose about this hoose, and inspiration strikes when we talk gnocchi. And welcome to the Vegan Life Magazine podcast, the podcast that's all about food that just happens to be vegan. If you don't consider yourself an eater of vegan food, you really should try it. Vegan foods include chips, hummus, bread, and any kind of fruit and vegetable. Like, what are you eating? Just elk? I'm Yapp. I write the jokey back page for Vegan Life Magazine, and we're here to offer advice and inspiration for your vegan cooking. Today, I have an illustrious panel of chefs and writers, as in proper ones who do books and that. Lauren Toyota is the author of Vegan Comfort Classics and Hot for Food All Day. Niki Webster is a plant-based chef and the author of Rebel Recipes and Be More Vegan. And Brett Cobley is the author of the official book of the hashtag What Vegans Eat. So, what's the secret to a good one-pot wonder? Let's start with you, Niki.
Oh, thank you for coming to me first.
Yeah, sorry.
I love a one-pot dish. I'm all over it. Loads of my dishes are sort of one-pot meals. I think it's about sort of, first of all, sort of like a classic base of, onions and garlic and sort of slow cooking and getting the base right. Using really lovely spices, but, cooking things really slowly. So you've got a really good foundation for your dish. So I think a lot of people throw it in, which is sort of what a one pot dish is about, but don't take the time to sort of cook things slowly. So I would do that sort of first step, slowly. And then for me, it's just about sort of layering flavors, sort of getting your base flavor, well underway with the spices and the garlic and onions. And then you can put, whatever your one pot dish might be after that, whether it's a curry or a stew or a dal or a soup or whatever. But, get your foundations right. And I think that's the key for me.
Do you have everybody I feel has like their sort of go-to spice or herb? Like, what's the one that you use slightly too much?
Yeah, cumin seeds. My really good friend and sort of fellow vegan chef, Bettina, is basically, she hates cumin seeds. And
you just do it to spite her?
Yes, and she knows. I mean, even though I know that she hates cumin seeds, and she's like, these little bits, they're getting on my food, for God's sake, just grind them up or something if you're going to put them in there, like grind cumin, basically. But I'm just obsessed with them. I can't help it. I just love cumin seeds. I don't mind the little crunchy bits. But I have to remember not to do that when she's, I'm cooking for her.
You're in a safe space and your friend's not here anyway. Lauren, what about you?
One pot. Yeah, I think my one pot repertoire is pretty slim. I make people get out 2 pots or a pan and a pot, but I did start doing some one pot stuff. I mean, admittedly, because it's sort of trendy. And I've got a one pot mac and cheese in my new book. But for me, although I don't know why I think of pasta. I think there's just like one pot pasta recipes everywhere now. And I might be wrong. Niki might know better, but it does feel like it's not just like a simple thing. Like you have to follow a recipe because you have to know the right ratio of liquid to solids, let's say. So you can't just necessarily throw everything in a pot unless you're doing an actual soup. Even with a curry, you have to get the liquid ratio right. Otherwise, your curry is going to be too thick or too thin. So to know the ratio liquid isn't necessarily like an automatic intuitive skill. Like as someone who develops recipes and tests recipes, I can't just whip together a one pot recipe. I have to do it a few times to make sure, did I put the right amount of liquid in this pot to absorb the right amount for the pasta? Let's say for this mac and cheese recipe, right? Or, so if it's anything other than a soup, I think it gets a little bit more difficult. So you should just Google one pot recipes. You know that someone like us, like Niki or I, or whoever, has already worked out the right ratio. Because even just me trying to come up with one pot recipes, I get a bit annoyed where I'm like, if I could just boil the pasta separately, I wouldn't have to be worrying about this. But it does end up
right.
It does end up with a really nice consistency when it is correct. It does seem like a fun way to make a meal, and you don't have to be washing as many dishes
when it works. Otherwise it's just minestrone, right?
Yeah
Exactly. Floaty bits.
Yeah, maybe you just changed the name of it. Brett, what about you?
I love a one pot, and I love a tray bake as well. I think tray bakes are maybe more of my answer to one pots. I think as well with those one pots, you'll see loads of beautiful Instagram stylized pictures of people putting all of the ingredients, including the spaghetti, in one pot, and then having that as the pin or the thumbnail, and people just think they can just bang everything in and it's going to work out great. But as Nikki said, you got to really layer it up. Especially this time of year, I love a tray bake, and I love to just get a ton of root vegetables, some olive oil, some herbs and spices, and then go ham on that. For me, the ultimate one pot is, just... I made this dish called Zeviastroni when I went to a lovely little town called Zevio in Italy, and still my favourite one pot. Yeah,
I take your point in terms of dosing. You're absolutely right. And we will come on to, I may try and prize more information about your mac and cheese recipe out of you, Lauren,
Sure.
in a little bit, because we've had a question about that. We've got some questions, though, from listeners. You can email us. It's podcast@veganlifemag.com. If you've got a culinary question, let's jump in with some of those. Michael asks, how can I bring texture to a stew? Let's start with you, Brett.
If your stew is feeling a bit boring and it's feeling maybe it's a bit slimy or everything's a bit overcooked, I love adding a nice baked crouton in at the end. I think croutons in stews work really well. Obviously, typically, I think the real British thing to do is get some nice crusty bread with a stew, but to do some nice baked croutons and kind of have that in there as part of it is a really nice way to go about it.
That's a lovely idea. Nikki, what about you?
Well, I would probably, for example, my stew I'm assuming it's going to be a vegetable-based type stew. And I just put different types of vegetables in there, which already gives lots of different textures. And then I probably put some pulses because I love a pulse. So I'd put some lentils and some chickpeas, which add immediate texture anyway. And then I'm really big on toppings. So if it's a nice sort of could be a creamy stew or a chunky stew, but then if you want extra texture, I probably add a little sprinkle. So maybe some toasted seeds or some dukkha, or I even like sort of putting quite salad elements on top of something hot. So maybe I put some pickles or some slaw or something. May sound weird, but it really works if you've got something warm and then you've got something crunchy on top.
What's forgive my ignorance, what's dukkha?
Oh, so it's basically a sort of spiced Middle Eastern nutty condiment.
That sounds fantastic.
It's really good.
What spices are in it?
You can vary it, but
you'll be like cumin seeds. It's cumin seeds.
Obviously cumin, coriander, but then you can put sort of caraway, sort of chili flakes, and then you can put a variety. It could be a seeded one, or pistachio, or hazelnut. Then you can put fresh herbs like mint or thyme or something. It's amazing, and lots of salt.
Fabulous. Lauren, what about you?
Yeah, I agree with Nikki about the kind of raw salad, fresh element on top of hot food. That's I love that. I put salad greens, microgreens, arugula on top of anything hot, like pasta, stew, curry, anything. That adds good crunch and texture. Same maybe minced shallot or raw red onion too would be nice, depending on what you're eating. And then in the actual stew, people think again, one pot, let me cook it all. Then it gets mushy and it just becomes one texture. Something I do even with a curry is I'll do the tofu separate. So crispy tofu separate, pan fry it separate or bake it separate, and then make your curry base with maybe some of the vegetables. But again, it's all about that cooking order. If you're going to add broccoli to a curry, don't add it until the very end so that it stays slightly crisp and it's not overcooked and yellow. I always remind people, your greens should be bright green. They should not be yellowed. They should not be soft and mushy. So I think it's really about potatoes first. Potatoes can cook longer, get mushy. Corn, fine. Corn adds a nice texture, but it can withstand longer cooking. But then don't add things like broccoli, green beans, things like that till the middle to end. Those stay crisp. And then put your crispy tofu on top. And then when you're eating it, it gets mixed in, but it's not going to become mushy or all same as the rest of the stew or whatever you're calling it. So for me, it's about cooking order and then layering, right?
Totally. This is my first gleek of the recording. Congratulations, Lauren. My mouth is watering quite heavily now. You had me at fried tofu. I mean, what's not to love about fried tofu?
Exactly.
Actually, on the note of texture, it would be quite good to jump to Nicole's question. She asks, what's a good meat replacement for chili? I find everything I use goes soggy or falls apart. And I found this. A lot of the sort of commercially available mince products kind of just disintegrate. Does anybody have any ideas for a good meat replacement? Lauren, what about you?
I mean,
Beyond Meat's quite good for chili.
Again, cooking order. While a traditional chili with beef, you'd really be using the beef as a flavor base. We're not necessarily using a vegan beef or a ground beef as a flavor base. We have to add that flavor, right? We have to saute onion and garlic, the mirepoix, whatever, add those spices in the oil to get them heated and like the essence coming out. So you're really building the flavor not from meat in the case of a vegan chili. So again, I would just add that cooked beef replacement, whether you're using Beyond Beef crumbles. I don't know if you guys get Gardein in the UK or corn or whatever you're using. I would just cook it separate and stir it in near the end or just for serving. Because you're not relying on there's no fat in these products, so they're not going to be part of the flavor base.
That's a top tip, isn't it? Niki, what about you?
I don't tend to use that many meat replacement products in my recipes. So I know there's some great ones out there, but I don't typically do that. So I just really usually use meaty type vegetables and pulses. So again, I think the pui lentils are really earthy, sort of robust sort of texture and flavour. And then sort of, things like bolognese and chilies and things, I use lots of sort of toasted walnuts crushed up, which give really good texture. And then mushrooms, which obviously is like the classic one to give like, sort of meatiness. That's what I do. And then again, sort of, as Lauren said, it's like, really getting amazing flavour in there and getting the sort of umami flavours. So I put some just like vegan Worcestershire sauce. I put some soy in there, some tamari or whatever. And just really get some sort of like layer the flavours. And then I would probably replicate that sort of like robust, meaty, substantialness with, pulses and veg, basically.
Do you know, I had a moment, I bought some free from Worcestershire sauce from a supermarket. This is about a year ago. And I was like, they have really nailed this. This is really good. And then I discovered it was free from gluten.
Yes. Be careful.
Fish.
Yeah.
I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So that got donated.
Biona's a good one for the vegan one.
Oh, okay, that's a good tip.
Yeah.
Thank you. Brett, what about you?
I like the way you told us that you got it from a supermarket, just so we knew that you didn't get it from some kind of dealer of vegan Worcestershire sauce.
No, I trust my dealer. He's really good.
He wouldn't give you gluten
He
free.
gives me little bags of Gnochs.
I think a lot of it is about the cooking time, not overdoing it with some of the kind of vegan minces and not adding too much liquid with them as well. If you leave them too long or if you add too much liquid, they can definitely get mushy. If you also try the kind of minced protein that comes like dried in the bags that you have to rehydrate, a lot of people will use those. They can go super mushy if you're gonna use those for those kind of recipes. I find a lot of the frozen ones work quite well. And I do rate the Beyond Meat one, to be honest. I think that does work really well as a good mince replacement for bologneses and for chilies as well. But as Niki said, going with the kind of whole food plant-based approach of adding some nuts and lentils and maybe some dried mushrooms as well is always a great way to go on it.
I love that, we've called this episode One Pot Wonders, but pretty unanimously, I think we agreed that just don't do it in one pot. That's the top tip, isn't it? Amrit, this is sort of, we've already just touched upon this, but how can I make my sauces more, quote, beefy, unquote? Obviously, I don't think Amrit means that literally. Lauren, you already sort of touched upon the whole thing that, we have to pack in our own flavours.
Yeah, and do you mean beefy like beefed up or actually to taste meaty? I think you mean
I
meaty.
think probably to taste meaty, yeah.
Yeah. Well, Nikki touched on it a bit with the umami base ingredients. I do use a lot of vegan Worcestershire when I'm trying to replicate beefiness against soy sauce or tamari. Miso sometimes, again, in that same family, but that fermented quality, that umami, that thing that hits the tongue that makes you feel satisfied. That's what meat does, right? That's what searing meat does. So we have to replicate that with flavor boosters. And I also use a beef flavored bouillon base. So I have a product in North America called Better Than Bouillon, and they make a vegan beef and a vegan chicken flavor one. And again, it's just so funny because people are like, well, if you don't eat meat, there's no flavor. But it's like meat is cooked with all of the same herbs that we have access to. So you just have to remember, what family of herbs does beef rely on? And what family of herbs does chicken rely on? And then use those same combos in your vegetable cooking. And so that's what I try to mimic. But I will say the fact that we have these bouillon cubes or bouillon bases helps when you're doing the base of a chili, the base of a bolognese, or the base of, something that would normally have, quote, beef in it, right?
Yeah. Nikki, what about you?
Interestingly, I think for sort of like a bolognese, I've got a few bolognese recipes, and I think they got the longest list of ingredients, because I think it is exactly that, adding all of those extra flavors and layers of flavor, and also sort of cooking time. So I think to do it well, you have to sort of do it slowly. But I think, miso is a really good call from Lauren. That adds so much flavor. And then, cook it for a long time, and I think you'll get some really intense, good flavors there.
I never cook things slowly. I've got to get into that.
It's really worth it. Sometimes.
I'm always like, I've got 6 minutes to feed my child. Go. And it's kind of, what can I fry?
Yeah, make a big batch though, and then you've got, it's worth the investment. Then it's very quick after.
That's a really good idea. Brett, how do you beef things up?
Getting flavour right from the start, so making sure you really build your sauce up well. Getting herbs in there right from the word go, so that your herbs can infuse into the oil and then basically spread throughout the dish as you build up that sauce. If you want the meatiness in terms of, you do actually want the texture, and maybe that is what they're asking, things like mushrooms, as the wonderful Derek Sarno will show you time and time again, can create incredible meatiness. So looking at things like king oyster mushrooms, shredding those up, and then playing around with some of the flours that you can coat things in as well. So maybe tossing some of the meat alternatives like mushrooms or tofu and things like corn flour before you fry them, to get that extra crisp that you might get from things like a chicken skin if you were non-vegan.
We're going to pause questions from the listeners to ask the eternal question. What do you do? What do you do with tofu? Yes, what do you do with tofu? What's your go-to recipe for tofu? We've had some amazing submissions so far in the series. Let's start with you, Nikki. What do you do with tofu?
I use quite a lot of tofu actually, but I would just try and make it as crispy as possible. There's nothing worse than a sort of, sad, sort of slightly squidgy, sort of when it's supposed to be crispy tofu. So again, I think it's about being a little bit patient. So you need to have a really firm tofu is a good starting point. Get all the moisture out and just basically make it really crispy by cutting them into little cubes, and then very carefully on each side, sort of frying them until they are super crispy on each side.
Every face.
Turn. Yeah.
Right.
So, and then you will get a really lovely, crispy on every side piece of tofu.
This is going to take me forever because I always cut my tofu into dodecahedrons.
Just carefully, turn them over, and then you're going to get some lovely crispy tofu. Marinate them beforehand would be amazing, so you've got loads of flavour, and then they're really good to add to all sorts of dishes then. But my other favourite thing with silken tofu is just to make a dessert with it. It just makes a really amazing sort of chocolate peanut butter mousse, and you can make that very quickly.
Now? Sorry. How do you... Sorry.
So
how do you make the chocolate peanut butter mousse?
So easy. So silken tofu in a food processor, add some, lots of ways of doing it, but essentially some peanut butter, some maple syrup, any nut butter, tahini, whatever, and then some raw cacao, or even better, some melted chocolate. Pour that in. It's a little bit of coconut oil. Blitz it up. Put it in some cups. You'll have the most amazing chocolate mousse ever.
Wow.
So good.
Brett, what do you do with tofu?
I get really passionate about tofu because it's so boring to hear people constantly say that they either don't know what to do with it because there's a billion and one recipes out there that have it and it can help you out, and B, don't like it because to not like it, ultimately you're just unpacking it and eating it like an apple, because that's the only way it sucks.
Yeah.
So
does it?
I don't I don't cut it. I always tear it because I want as much surface area as possible to get it really, really crispy. So I like to get some oil in a pan, get it nice and hot, tear my tofu into chunks, smallish chunks, again, maximizing the surface area. And then I corn flour it and salt it. And then I fry it. Once you've banged it in the pan, you got to leave it, again, be patient, leave it for a really good amount of time, like 5 minutes until it gets super crispy. The same way someone would, you know, for people out there who pride themselves in how they sear a steak, they talk about the same thing, you know, getting a seared edge, getting that crispy coating on it. That's what you need to do as well with tofu. Once that's built up and your tofu will slide around the pan or skillet, that's when you can start to toss it. And then I like to add hoisin sauce right when it's crispy all over. Toss it in the hoisin sauce and keep cooking it until the hoisin sauce gets really, really thick like a treacle. And then that's how I serve it on quinoa, rice, bulgur wheat, just with some nice broccoli or pak choy.
That's mucky. Lauren, what about you?
My mouth.
I mean that in a good way.
My mouth is watering now. Everyone's saying all the right things here. I'm really enjoying this conversation. I love tofu. I am a #1 tofu fan. I try to get people on it all the time. I try to tell all these same things that these guys are saying. Like, it's about the cooking technique. It's about the flavor you pack in. It's about the slow, the patient, like letting it fry. I guess just another technique that's been floating around. I don't know if people saw, but it's great if you actually take your brick, freeze your brick, thaw your brick, then do the tear like Brett's saying, and then you're getting this interesting thing. I don't know what happens because I'm not a scientist, but the chewiness becomes a little bit more meat-like and a little bit more palatable to people. You don't have to do this, but it's just interesting how the freezing and the thawing transforms it with the moisture being taken out.
It is completely different, isn't it?
Yeah, it's completely different. And then at that point, I mean, you can do a real fried chicken. You can do a real Southern fried batter, double dredge, deep fry, or I have just a baked version where I don't do the freeze because I find I cut the firm brick into like fish stick shapes, and then I do just a dredge coating with Dijon and milk. Like I do Dijon and milk. You could do hot sauce and milk, like just something wet. Then a breadcrumb mixture with herbs and nutritional yeast and garlic powder and salt. And then they're like chicken nuggets. And when you bake them at a high temperature, that same drying technique is happening. So when you bite into them, it does feel like a chicken finger. Like it's dried out from the bake time, and it's helped the moisture evaporate. But with the coating, the breadcrumb coating, it really like keeps the right amount in at the same time. And then you've got this chewy thing, this like great texture. So that's what I like doing.
I'm so thrilled. I've been waiting for 6 weeks for someone to say freeze your tofu and then thaw it, because I do that a lot. And the best way I could use to describe the texture is completely different to, you know, is it however firm a tofu you've bought, when you freeze it, and I was thinking, well, what does it most closely resemble? And the only thing I can think of is so gross, but it's when you were at school, the sponges they had to like clean up spilt milk in the kitchen. They would stink. They were like really old, these sponges, and they were like really tough and rubbery, and they sort of desiccated. But I mean, they were grotesque. But tofu takes on this incredibly different texture. As you say, you could bounce it off a wall. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm going to try that. Haven't tried it.
Oh, you haven't tried
it? No, need to.
You haven't lived.
No,
it's so
clearly
exciting.
not.
Very exciting.
But Jake, should I turn my light on? I've gotten very dark here. Does it matter?
It is quite. I mean, it's very atmospheric. But you look a bit like a contestant that just gave a wrong answer on a game show.
Yeah. I'm going to
you are eliminated.
I'm going to go and turn the light on. That's okay. Okay.
I've found for me when I began veganism, I did just really elaborate sauces and marinades and stuff. And as I've sort of gone further and further as a vegan, I'm into my 10th year. I want less and less pollution of my tofu. Like Brett, you were saying you'd never eat it out of the packet. I was like, I have in the car park. Like I want less than one of my favorite dishes is samphire. You know that sort of sea
salty
thing. Yeah. Just a bed of that steamed with just some sliced tofu and maybe some like sesame oil and some kind of rice vinegar or something and some sesame seeds over the top, and that's it.
Well, like Japanese, I'm half Japanese. We ate cold tofu with soy sauce and green onion on top. I mean, I don't know if there's a traditional name for it, but that's what I actually remember us eating at the dinner table sometimes. My grandma would have it. And I like didn't want to admit that I liked it because it seemed weird, but it's so good. Just like cold tofu out of the fridge, like a softer one. But it still holds its shape. And then you just, soy sauce and scallions. It's so good.
I've had that, and it's really smooth and creamy when you slice through. Yeah, lovely.
I think what gets people, though, is the fact that they're told constantly that it's this, like, meat replacement.
Yeah.
And then if they go from meat to not doing anything to their tofu and then trying it, they're just like, is this the peak of veganism? Like, what is this? It's a bit off-putting.
But it is that thing of, I mean, I don't really remember. I suspect if you just like boiled a chicken, it probably wouldn't taste that good. You know what I mean? Like you do have to do something to meat too. Okay, let's have some more listeners' questions. Becca asks, what's a good easy meal I can make for my toddler and myself because he can't have too much salt or spice? Lauren, let's start with you.
Kids are notoriously picky and they just like white pasta and white bread usually. That's my friends' kids all seem to just live on that and like grapes. So I'm gonna go back to my one pot mac and cheese, which is actually very easy. It only takes 10 minutes.
This is great because Izzy wanted to know a good mac and cheese.
Well, yeah, and the base of it is, it's not that salty. You can adjust the salt, obviously, but you can also build up your flavor from there. So you have your one pot. You give your kid the plain, put some ketchup on it or whatever. Maybe you can throw in some peas or broccoli if they'll eat that, right, while it's cooking, just to like, again, blanch those to keep them crisp-ish. But then you as the adult, and I have this in my new book, 5 ways to level up the mac and cheese, pizza mac and cheese, red Thai curry mac and cheese, whatever. And so the adult can then have a more sophisticated mac and cheese with different mix-ins in it. That would be my go-to because then the kid is happy and it's not full of dairy, but they don't know the difference. And then you get to have all different types of additions on yours if you want to make it really spicy or whatever.
That red Thai curry.
It's my favorite one,
I may have to leave and get that going. Nikki, what about you?
I'd go with pasta as well. And I just go with a really speedy, like pea pesto, sort of pea sauce. So because I know not every child likes peas, but it's one of the safer bets, like lovely and sweet and easy, and everyone's got some frozen peas in the freezer, haven't they? So I'll make you, and this sort of doubles up as a dip, and you can there's a million ways of doing it, but essentially it's sort of frozen peas blitzed, and then you can put as simple as just a little bit of olive oil and some salt and pepper, or then you can make like a pesto version with some pine nuts and a bit of basil in there, and it just tastes really delicious. It's so simple. You can do it in minutes and cook some pasta, and I think that's a really good one for everyone. Super easy, but kids like it as well.
Brett,
I really like experimenting with my little nephew. If you want to kind of reduce the salt amount that they have, it's great to be able to make your own kind of beans, like a beans on toast, but make your own version of the beans, make your own tomato sauce for it. You can spice it however you want. You can really reduce the amount of salt that they're having by just having some haricot beans and then making your own sauce. I grew up on beans on toast, beans on jacket potato. A wonderful jacket potato with some mashed up chickpeas and make it like a chickpea tuna mayo is a really great go-to. You gotta get the baked potato right.
You have.
To it all.
How do you do? Oh, come on then. How do you do your baked potatoes?
Pierce it all over, tons of times. Microwave for 5 minutes. Rub it in olive oil, coarse sea salt, and then bang it in the oven for about 50 minutes. And the outside will go super, super crispy. It'll really start to bubble up with the salt. And then, slice it open, give it a squeeze, and fill it with some vegan butter.
Nice. Nikki, how do you bake potato?
Oh, really similarly. Yeah, it's the same sort of principle. But I love jacket potato with a really crispy skin and beans. I was brought up on beans as well. I love baked beans. I could eat them, all the time. So yeah, I like a homemade baked bean as well, of course. But I could just like normal beans is absolutely fine. But yeah, crispy potato skin. Don't think many things could beat it. I love it.
Lauren, are you partial to a baked potato?
I don't make a whole baked potato all that often, but I really like that Brett mentioned the microwave thing, because I remember in college, I would actually take a russet potato, which I think you guys are calling jacket potato, a russet potato. I would just microwave it the whole time, and it would get this amazing base that's crispy, and then the whole inside would be perfect. Now, I know not everyone's a fan of the microwave, but if you just want, because a baked potato from scratch takes 40, 50 minutes or something. If you just do it in the microwave for 10 minutes, it's so fast. So I'm actually going to do that. I haven't done that in so long, but I usually cut up my russet into cubes, toss on the baking sheet with oil and spices, salt and pepper, and then bake that for 20 minutes at 450, and they get nice and crispy chunks. And I put that on my salads and bowls. I love hot crispy potatoes on salad. That's my favorite thing. It's like a more sophisticated fries and salad, which you end up eating at restaurants all the time.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
it's the two vegan sides.
Exactly.
I put in a call for my little boy. His favourite thing growing up when he was a toddler as well is if you find a packet of gnocchi. They're not all vegan. Do check. A lot of them have skim milk powder in, but fry it in some olive oil.
Yeah.
It was Nigella Lawson put me onto that. But you can go further, which is right at the end. Once it's pretty much golden brown and crispy. It's crispy and chewy on the outside, and fluffy and soft on the inside. But then, and this is for anybody who's kind of missing a bit of a bacony hit. Smoked paprika, garlic powder, and some nutritional yeast flakes. Kind of toss it all in that. And then, frankly, too much salt. Like bacon. Yeah. It's just salt and smoke and fat. That's all you want. It's not the bacon. Anyway, it satisfies all those cravings brilliantly. So you can give your kid a sort of slightly healthier version, and then you can drown your own portion in salt.
Have you had sweet crispy fried gnocchi? That's delicious.
No, what's on that?
So basically fry it the same, and then you can just put some, toss it in some maple syrup, and then put some vegan ice cream on it all, topping. It's absolutely amazing.
What the heck? What about
all these years?
What about if you did like the cinnamon sugar? You know how people like cinnamon sugar?
Come on!
Like churros.
What is churros?
Yes.
So, oh my god, this is amazing. So you do like butter, cinnamon sugar, toss. Oh wow.
Make it really crispy, and then you'll love the cinnamon. I think that would be amazing.
Like
or your maple, and then some lovely creamy vegan ice cream. Gorgeous.
I mean, potatoes are just a universal donor, aren't they?
Recipe? Nikki and Bricky, do you already have
No, I don't. It's just a real pure sort of simple indulgence. You've got to try it.
Nice. We're all going to put it out now. Let's start a TikTok trend, okay? Churro gnocchi.
Yeah.
That is genius.
That's ridiculous.
Such genius. Amazing work, everyone. You're all wonderful. Okay, let's move on. Jack says, I love to host with friends and family, but I hate being in the kitchen all the time. What is a low-maintenance dish that will wow? Jack, you'd always just get a sledgehammer, knock through. But no. Brett, have you got any suggestions?
My mind went to the same place as you. I was thinking Deliveroo at first. I don't know how he's going to not be in the kitchen and host. A really low-maintenance one. What I like to do for things like that, if I know I'm not going to have a lot of time on the night, or if I'm hosting but I want to be in the room and you don't want to just be in the kitchen all the time, which sometimes being in the kitchen all the time is a good alternative if it wasn't even your idea to host. But preparing things, so doing things like a lasagna, preparing the lasagna beforehand, putting it in the fridge for a full day before is actually, for me, I think it makes it even better. So something like a lasagna where you can prepare it ahead of time, bake it on the night, and then be present, be in the room, be topping people's wine glasses up.
Niki, what about you?
Okay, so I've got, I think a lot of it is about presentation if you're having a dinner party. So I've got 2 recipe ideas which I think work really well. One is also lasagna, but making a sort of an open layered lasagna, which just looks really pretty. I've got a recipe in my first book. And of course, sort of dry pasta is vegan anyway. So all you have to do is boil it and sort of, so they're cooked. And then you can basically layer them, cut them and layer them in stacks. For example, in my first book, I've got some mushrooms, loaded mushrooms, and then loads of truffle oil. So it feels really special, but it's just like and it looks like a stack of lasagna, but it's open lasagna. It looks very lovely. And then the other thing, again, because it's about presentation, because it's a dinner party, but you can make it ahead, is I've got a really nice recipe for sort of layered, baked aubergine and pepper, which you can do all beforehand, and then layer them up with really gorgeous pesto sauce and then sort of roast tomatoes, and that looks really special as well. But you can make everything ahead.
Nice. Lauren?
I mean, I think when we say dinner party, people start getting this perception of fancy and 3 courses and whatever. But no, you don't have to do that, I think I'm like pizza or tacos. Like, first of all, you can buy pre-made pizza dough at the grocery store. At least we can here in North America. It just comes fresh. You just roll it out onto a oiled pan. Super easy. You can do that before everyone gets there. And either, like, again, you are going to talk around the island with wine or beer or whatever. So you might as well just make the pizza with everybody while you're standing there, or have a couple people, you might make 2 or 3 of these pizzas. And they don't take long. Once you've got your hot oven, 475, 500, throw it in the oven, and it only takes 20 minutes. And so that way you can have people throw whatever they want on it. You can make them fancier. You can do pesto based. You can do olive oil, garlic based. You don't have to do tomato and cheese. You know what I mean? Like, it can be a little more fun than that. Or tacos, because you can make a taco filling, mushrooms, mushroom meat base, or whatever, even like squash and mushrooms, like chopped up squash, kabocha squash or something. And then you can make that in advance, just keep it in the pan, reheat it. And then you just have all your toppings out. And that way you're like making everyone else do the work. You're like, here's the hot tortillas, make your own tacos, and then have a salad on the side or whatever. So I like it when it's a little bit more family style, communal like that, personally. I think it takes the pressure off, and then it you're serving something that people want to eat. It's fun and it's comforting. And then make Niki's easy pudding and just have that in the fridge for dessert, and throw some ice cream or whipped cream on it.
Yeah. Delegation, I think, is a great top tip. Okay, we'll rattle through a couple of these because we're running out of time. But Jasper asks, cream or no cream in a carbonara? Brett?
Carbonara is one of the funniest things I ever make because it is guaranteed to get people in your comments. So obviously people will say all the time, there's no cream in a traditional carbonara. And I'm like, it also isn't vegan. So as starters, I mean to go on and do whatever I want. I love really thinly slicing some tofu, season it up again, oregano, smoked paprika, things like that, soy sauce. Make your little smoky bits of bacon, and then I add soy cream. I add soy cream, nutritional yeast, a little bit of vegan cheese. Mix it all together. Sometimes Kala Namak, black salt for the eggy flavour. Toss that with the pasta. Happy days.
You're right that the carbonara is sort of the ultimate sort of defiance thing if you're a vegan, because it is so not vegan. You might as well put a baby seal in there, so whatever we do, it's going to be heresy against the original. Niki, what about you?
It's not something I really make. I mean, sadly, the only sort of carbonara I've gone so far away from a carbonara that it can't even be anywhere like carbonara. If I make something like that I've sort of loosely called a carbonara, it's basically with cauliflower or squash or sweet potato, and somehow I've still called it carbonara, but I think it's because I haven't really got a fundamental knowledge of what one is. So so yeah, I'm not really qualified to say, because I think it's because I haven't really because I've never really eaten that much dairy because I've got a dairy intolerance. So I haven't really had that much experience of cooking with dairy or trying to replicate those dishes. So I'm just like, oh yeah, I'll just it's like a cauliflower thing. Yeah, so I think I can't. It's not going to be anything like a carbonara.
That's great trolling. I think if someone talks about carbonara, I go, oh yeah, that cauliflower thing. That's
Yeah.
Lauren, what about you?
Oh my God, I love carbonara, like original bacon, egg, cheese carbonara when I wasn't vegan. I have the most offensive vegan carbonara of all, if you want to talk about tradition. But Brett has it right. Like, carbonara, of course, cannot be made vegan without the use of some kind of cream, because you're not really relying on the melting of the cheese and the emulsification of an egg. You're trying to recreate that, and you do need a few ingredients. So my recipe actually uses a zucchini cream sauce. And the reason I actually did this is because when I went to Italy and I found some vegan places making fresh pasta and sauces, they use these really long zucchinis in Italy. They're like long zucchinis, and they're at the markets, and they're just, I was like, I'd never seen this in my life.
Yeah.
And
I mean, how literally how long? Are you talking about like 2 or 3 feet?
Longer.
What?
Sometimes they were longer, long and skinny, this type of zucchini. Anyway, a couple restaurants that I found were amazing. They were blending the zucchini into cream sauce, and I thought, wow, haven't I thought of that when I blend potato and carrots into cheese sauce? How come I didn't think of blending zucchini? Because the starch and the water of a zucchini is perfect for this. So I came home and took our regular, you probably call them squash, but do you call them zucchini?
We call them courgettes because
courgette. Oh my God, yes.
Yeah.
So a courgette, green skin, peel the skin off, chop it up, saute it with garlic, then blend that with gnocchi, kalanamak, or actually I had the kalanamak at the end so it doesn't lose the flavor. But the other atrocious secret ingredient is pickle brine or sauerkraut brine. And that gives you that tang or that acidity or that fermented quality that an old cheese would have.
Love that.
So this is like, to an Italian, they're like, what are you even doing? But the end result is, I'm telling you, I think as close as you could get as a vegan. And I do the same thing like Brett, like either the tofu smoky bits, or I do tempeh bacon bits in the pan. So once you've got that smoky, no, it's so good. But that smoky essence in the pan, remove the bacon, throw in the pasta and the sauce. Then that smokiness gets a bit in there too. Put it back on top. Then I like my Violife parm. Yeah. That stuff is amazing and realistic. Nice. So then that goes on top and also stirred in. Brilliant. I don't know. It's one of my favorite things.
Lauren, do you go parsley or no parsley?
I actually don't do parsley.
I don't do parsley either.
You could if you wanted, but I don't.
Parsley on the parsley. Yeah. It's really interesting what you were saying about some sauerkraut juice or pickle juice. I had a conversation with a guy, he's like a venture capitalist, and he was looking at putting tons of money into a company that they just done like a really, really big deal. I think they're a South American company. And so I'm probably disclosing all kinds of trade secrets, but I never signed an NDA. Anyway, they basically had found a way to replicate, to effectively synthesize flavors, but naturally. So what they'd done is they take all the different like quantum flavor elements that comprise an apple, and they could isolate each one and sort of profile it and catalog it, and then they could look at which ones actually were the same in different foods. So you can imagine for the vegan market, they were finding ways to give you meat or dairy flavors that were exact replicas, but taking these little individual flavor notes from plants. And guess which two fruits or vegetables comprise the main flavor notes for dairy milk, cow's milk?
That's a challenge.
I mean, I would guess
Cabbage.
Yeah, like something with a fermenty quality.
Cabbage. Nikki, you want to guess?
Not sure I do.
I mean, don't worry about it.
Yeah, I have no clue. I could say like even a citrus or like an apple or like a cauliflower.
I'm going to say I'm really impressed. I'm so impressed. And it absolutely is a hallmark of your credentials as chefs. The two principal flavors are taken from cabbage and pineapple.
Interesting.
Pineapple.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
But it's brilliant because I never sort of thought about that kind of cabbagey flavor to dairy milk. But it's
that's
actually,
really interesting.
One of the first vegan milks on the market was made from cabbage.
Really?
No way.
Yeah, Plamil, I think, made it.
Oh, yeah.
Because I was cooking for a vegan charity, and I said that I'd been vegan about 5 years, and she was like, "Oh, okay, so you're a newbie," and I was like, "Yeah, okay, I suppose." And she was like, "You're just not hardcore like me. The first vegan milk I ever had was made from cabbage."
That's amazing.
I was like, "Hey, props! Like, give you your dues.
Yeah.
You did well."
Yeah.
Was that in the 70s? I feel like it would be, but
Maybe like a while ago. They've been vegan like maybe like 30, 40 years. So.
What do you think constitutes an OG vegan? Like, how long in the game do you have to have been vegan to be an original gangster vegan, Lauren?
I definitely, I'm on my 11th year, and I feel like I've seen so many phases of this evolution. But I still don't consider myself OG because I know people who've done it for double, 20, 21 years. Those are the OGs because they couldn't buy vegan cheese. They were making like lentil meatloaf. They were making their own nut milk, which people still do for health reasons. But it's like I can walk into a store and buy anything now. When I started, there was no good vegan cheese. And it was like, again, the misconceptions or the conceptions that like, oh, it tastes like cardboard or it's just off. Like I lived through that too, but it was so much worse 10 years prior.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It tasted like cork dipped in vinegar.
Yeah.
Ellie asks, I really miss seafood, especially in pasta dishes. Are there any good recipes out there that I can veganize? Seafood's a tricky one, isn't it? Nikki.
That's hard. Oh, no, don't start with me.
Yeah,
I've got no idea on that one.
Yeah. You just take that one.
Yeah. Honestly, the only thing I can say is add seaweed for a seafood flavour.
Yeah.
Actually replicating, fish, I think is really, really, really difficult. But for a fishy flavour, I would definitely add seaweed. And you can make some really nice sort of fish cakes, potato fish cakes with some dried seaweed, and I think that works really nicely. And it's got like a fishy essence, but I mean, but for the texture, right? That's difficult, I think.
Yeah, Brett.
Capers, capers are a good one. Seaweed's a good one. Citrusy flavors, and then depending on what kind of fish you liked, whether it was the posher fish or whether you were eating common fish like me, batter, doing like a tofu battered fish and chips, or banana blossoms, marinating some banana blossoms and then battering them and doing a flaky fish and chips that way is really good. But yeah, it's hard to get the more delicate fishes down.
Lauren?
My answer is mushrooms. Mushrooms have a fishy quality to them. I do and I'm not the first one that did this, but an king oyster mushroom scallop. That's been getting trendier too online. It looks like a scallop. It tastes like scallop. So I have an older recipe that's the scallops with a linguine with kale and pomegranate and a really simple garlic olive oil sauce. So that I think is like pretty close to seafood linguine too. So I would do that on a pasta, and then you guys already mentioned the flavor enhancers for sure, capers, seaweed or whatever. I'm not a big fan of the actual sea flavor. Like I do avoid a lot of overly powerful sea flavor or seaweed. So I'm not looking for that. I think it's texture for me, and I think mushrooms do accomplish that to a degree. when prepared properly. And then I have a seafood chowder recipe, which I used mushrooms as well, but also hearts of palm. And I also make a calamari from oyster mushrooms too, which actually is pretty. People have said it's better than regular calamari. But again, that texture with the batter accomplishes that same thing you're looking for from fish or seafood, right? Fried seafood.
That's a top tip.
I've not even tried it, and I can say it's better than regular calamari because it doesn't kill any animals.
Yeah.
It's sort of lame confession, but before I turned vegan, I was a pescatarian, which, if you're a pescatarian and you're listening, it's not a thing. Okay.
Stop it.
So, yeah, you know better. Come on. But anyway, I said I fish, and I was working on this job. That sounds very glamorous. I was working in Monte Carlo in Monaco, and I was writing the script for the World Music Awards, and all of the crew had to go down. There was like a canteen where everybody ate, because in Monaco, like a cheeseburger costs $40. Like, it's so expensive. So you sort of got fed, because otherwise you just be bankrupt by the end of the week. And down in the cafeteria, I sort of said, "Look, I'm vegetarian and stuff." And the guy said, "Would you eat fish?" And I sort of stopped by there. I said, "Sure, I'll eat some fish." And he said, "Okay, great. I'm gonna have a great treat for you for dinner." I was like, "Okay, cool." And dinner time came, and I got down there, and he was like, "Look at this!" Mwah! He was like, "I'm so jealous of your dinner," and it was this huge plate, and it was just a mound of fried squid. Like, it was like a bucket of fried squid, and I didn't like it. I don't like it. But this guy was like, "I've gone to all this trouble for you, and I would love to be eating this." And I was like, "Cool." Rank. Let me put in a shout though for the TKC vegetarian cod fillet, which is widely available in Asian supermarkets. And it's really good as a sort of white fish substitute. I mean, I don't know about you, but like the further you get into veganism, the less comfortable you are with something that really, really has the texture of meat.
Yeah.
You kind of want a bit of bite and a bit of chew, but you don't. There's a limit. And this is kind of in the sweet spot. So it's got some nori on the back instead of a skin. But it's a sort of slightly flaky white fish thing. I would say that I recently discovered, I mean, it's because, I'm a Luddite, but Fine Herbe, Fines Herbs. It's a blend that's often used on white fish, and it's like tarragon and chervil and stuff. And that with some butter, I think that would be a really good passable. Like you say, if you want that kind of old school ready meal fish taste, you know what I mean? Sometimes you want something a bit.
Do you know what it's made out of? Because the Asian mock shrimp are made with konjac root.
Yeah,
so
it's
a root
not
vegetable
that
that has a. No.
Yeah, I'm not cool with konjac. It's too chompy. It's too close to like when you bite the inside of your mouth. You know what I mean?
I like it in certain cases. I do like those shrimp. And then, do you guys get Gardein over there?
No, we don't get
Gardein. To be honest, makes fish fillets, frozen fish fillets, and
Amazing.
They have konjac root as well as pea protein, I believe, and they are very good, and it tastes like fish and chips, and the texture is amazing, and it's very close, but I can still eat it.
Yeah.
Because they really nailed the balance of flavor and texture. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to book a flight. I don't know which way. Maybe just load it up with those coming back here.
I can ship them now.
They do them. They do them at my local Sainsbury's in London.
Gardein.
The Gardein fish fillets, yeah.
What? Well, that saved me an airfare. Brilliant. I'm going to leave it there because we have easily run out of time. Where should people go to find all of you? Brett, tell us.
Just at Brett Cobley on Instagram. And I thought it might be a good time to announce it, that I'm doing another book, and It's going to be called Easy Vegan.
That's not in a sort of like kind of easy vegan.
No,
like
no,
back
no.
off. Like,
Whoa.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought, and I'm not easy either. Before anyone asks that. No, it's more of those simple recipes. a lot of the things we've talked about today in terms of simple recipes. So
congratulations.
Yeah, that's very exciting.
Thank you.
We'll keep our eyes peeled for that. Nikki, tell us about where we can find you.
At Rebel Recipes on Instagram, or Rebel Recipes for my blog as well. There's loads of recipes there. And of course, my 2 cookbooks. One's called Rebel Recipes, just to be repetitive.
Great brand synergy, Nikki. Great brand synergy.
I see what I did there. And then my latest book is called Be More Vegan, which was released just before Christmas. Awesome. Lots of recipes. Yeah.
And Lauren.
Yay. At Hot for Food on Instagram, YouTube. Hotforfoodblog.com has all the free content, lots of recipes. And then my new book just came out, Hot for Food All Day, Easy Recipes to Level Up Your Vegan Meals. I'm showing you how to level up leftovers, which I think is a really just a fun way to reduce food waste, but keep things interesting. I'm not a big leftover fan. I don't love reheating leftovers, so I'm showing you how to transform portions of your leftovers into brand new recipes. So just get my new book, Hot for Food All Day.
Or you just know we will. That's it from us for now. Huge thanks to my guests, Brett Cobley, Lauren Toyota, and Niki Webster. If you're enjoying the podcast, look, I know everybody always asks you to rate, review, subscribe, and share, but they do it for a reason. It does make a massive, massive difference to how quickly this podcast grows. Even one review, one subscription does great things, algorithmically speaking. We've already made it to the top 5 podcasts on food in the UK Apple podcast charts, but I think we can do better. So if you would take the trouble, your vegan brothers and sisters would be very much obliged. And don't forget, if you've got a question, please send it in to podcast@veganlifemag.com. Vegan Life magazine is available to buy wherever you buy, magazines, or there's a Vegan Life app if you do that sort of thing, and you can get a subscription to the magazine at www.veganlifemag.com. That way you won't miss an issue, and they're cheaper than in the shops. But honestly, we're happy either way. We'll be back next week with more vegan feasting, but until then, from me, Jake Yapp, goodbye. This has been a Swanburst Media production.